What we just saw tonight was a vintage Caitlin Clark performance. 22 points, 9 assists, 47% from the field, 44% from three. And by far the best player on the floor, Caitlin Clark just had a fantastic game against the Valkyries. And it was a game where early on the Valkyries were whooping the Fever. They looked better in every single way. They were stronger, faster, and they wanted it more, which is why it seemed like they were going to confidently win this game from the sample size of the first half. But you got to see the Indiana Fever resilience, and you got to see Caitlin Clark rally her team back. But more than that, you got to see that Caitlin Clark ain't no daggone chump.
The moment involving Caitlin Clark and the Golden State Valkyries instantly exploded across social media because it felt bigger than just another physical play during a basketball game. Clark has quickly become the face of modern women's basketball, bringing unprecedented attention, ratings, and mainstream visibility to the WNBA, which is why every intense moment involving her now carries massive attention online. Fans immediately reacted because they believed the physicality crossed a line, and Clark's response made it clear she was not going to back down from anyone. What made the moment even more powerful was how familiar it felt to many viewers. Every time Clark steps onto the floor, opponents seem to raise their intensity another level, knowing the cameras, headlines, and spotlight are all following her. For many players, guarding Clark is not just another matchup anymore. It is an opportunity to prove themselves on the biggest stage women's basketball currently has. That pressure creates emotional, physical games where every possession feels personal. But what stood out most in this situation was Clark's composure and confidence. Instead of letting the moment overwhelm her, she answered with the kind of toughness and competitive fire that helped make her one of the biggest stars in sports. The reactions online have been intense because fans feel the situation represents something larger happening across the league. Many believe Clark has become a target because of her popularity, while others see it as the natural reality of being the biggest star in the game. Either way, the conversation surrounding her continues to grow with every national TV moment, every heated matchup, and every viral clip. And once again, Caitlin Clark found herself at the center of the basketball world.
In this game, it was Tiffany Hayes. She was the 6th player of the year last year, but she came out in this game hooping. And she was going at Caitlin Clark, talking that talk, and what we got to see was Caitlin Clark respond and show Tiffany Hayes that whatever you can do, I can do better. Caitlin Clark didn't just hoop it with her game, she had words.
The biggest question after that exchange is what moments like this actually do to Caitlin Clark mentally. Does the trash talk affect her? Does the physicality throw her off balance? Or does it push her into another level entirely? Because at this point, it almost feels like the more pressure opponents try to put on her, the better she becomes. That is what separates elite competitors from everyone else. Most players are distracted when emotions rise and the game turns personal. But Clark seems to feed off that energy instead of shrinking from it. The clip did not just show competitive fire. It showed exactly who she is under pressure. Every word exchanged, every stare, every physical possession revealed a player completely comfortable in those moments. Clark does not only beat opponents with skill, she wins the psychological battle too, matching intensity and then raising it another level. That is not something coaches can teach. It is part of what makes certain athletes feel different from everyone else. What made this performance even more impressive was the situation surrounding it. This was not a comfortable game where everything flowed easily from the opening tip. Indiana spent large stretches looking overwhelmed physically while the opponent played with desperation and aggression. But even with all of that happening around her, Clark still produced the kind of stat line that forces people to double-check the numbers. Efficient scoring, elite playmaking, and high-level shooting under constant pressure. Producing at that level while your team is struggling is far more difficult than putting up numbers during an easy win. And that is exactly why moments like this continue building her reputation as one of the toughest competitors in basketball. Here's the question that every single viewer watching this game had to be wrestling with at some point during that first half. If the Fever were being controlled that completely early on, if the energy gap was that visible and that one-sided, what was it going to take to flip the script? Was this going to be another game where a slow start turned into an unrecoverable deficit? And more specifically, was Caitlin Clark going to be the one to grab this game by the throat and drag her team back into it? Or was she going to get swallowed up by the same sluggish energy that had the Fever looking like the inferior team for those opening stretches? What this clip confirms is something that Clark's believers have always known, and her doubters have never wanted to fully admit. She is built differently in the moments that actually matter. There's a version of this game where the early deficit becomes a narrative about the Fever's limitations and Clark's inability to elevate a struggling team. But that is not the version that played out. Instead, what the second half delivered was a masterclass in competitive will and individual brilliance that shifted the entire tone of the game. The Fever did not just survive, they responded. And the engine behind that response was the one player on that floor who simply refused to let the early story become the final one. Let's talk about what this win actually means in the bigger picture, because this was not just another regular season result that gets filed away and forgotten by morning. The Indiana Fever just survived a serious test against a team that came in swinging with everything they had and walked away with a victory anyway. And more importantly, Caitlin Clark walked away from this game looking like a completely different player than the one some people were ready to write dismissive narratives about after a rocky start to the season. The turnovers were there. The foul trouble showed up. But when you strip all of that away and look at the actual impact she had on this game and the way she carried herself through every difficult moment, what you are watching right now is a player who has genuinely elevated her game to a level that goes beyond anything she has previously shown. This is not the college version. This is not the promising rookie finding her footing. This is a polished, battle-tested, elite professional who has figured out exactly who she is at this level.
We just saw tonight was a vintage Caitlin Clark performance. 22 points, 9 assists, 47% from the field, 44% from 3. And by far the best player on the floor, Caitlin Clark just had a fantastic game against the Valkyries. And it was a game where early on the Valkyries were whooping the Fever. They looked better in every single way. They were stronger, faster, and they wanted it more, which is why it seemed like they were going to confidently win this game from the sample size of the first half. But you got to see the Indiana Fever resilience, and you got to see Caitlin Clark rally her team.
The biggest question now is how much of Caitlin Clark's early season struggles were actually meaningful and how much of it was simply noise. The same people who rushed to doubt her after a few rough games are now watching performances like this and realizing they may have judged far too quickly. Because when you step back and look at the full picture, this version of Clark feels far closer to reality than the one critics tried to push during the slow start. Elite players are never defined by a small stretch of games, especially early in season before rhythm and confidence fully settle in. What Clark is showing now is exactly what happens when elite talent starts gaining real professional experience. The turnovers can improve, the foul trouble can be managed, but the vision, shot-making ability, leadership, and competitive mentality behind her game are already at a superstar level. And if she continues performing like this, the conversation around end-of-season awards will stop being a debate and start feeling inevitable. That is why Caitlin Clark has become bigger than just another basketball player. Every game she plays now feels like a major event because fans understand they are watching someone capable of changing the direction of an entire league. Moments like this are exactly why millions of new viewers are tuning into the WNBA for the first time. The intensity, the drama, the spotlight, and the performances all feel bigger whenever Clark is on the floor. This is the kind of player people remember years later and say they watched in real time.